speak into the mic. Keep my head still.
Yeah, we already recorded the billboard.
Welcome to Uptown Radio. It's Thursday, April 3rd. I'm your host, Madeline Riley. Today on the show, tariffs. Trump promised liberation, but New Yorkers are feeling resistant.
The prices are the same. We didn't change. We are trying to resist it, actually.
Critics say the Adams administration has been slow to implement the New York City streets plan, and that's leading to cyclist deaths.
We place what we call ghost bikes as memorials and as dedications to somebody who was riding a bicycle and was killed.
The Trump administration has frozen a grant program that reimbursed New York farmers for climate resiliency projects.
And to have this money potentially disappear is devastating.
And matcha farmers can't keep up with the social media demand for the popular drink. New Yorkers might have to go without. All this and more coming up.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. stock market is leading a global sell-off, underscoring the shock from new sweeping tariffs out of the world's biggest economy. At the close, the Dow Jones Industrial Average sank more than 1,600 points, or nearly 4%. The NASDAQ slid more than 1,000 points, down nearly 6%. The S&P was down 4.8%. NPR's Scott Horsley with more on the fallout.
The tariffs that President Trump announced late Wednesday are both higher and broader than investors had expected. Starting this weekend, the U.S. will charge a minimum 10% tariff on nearly everything that's imported. Products from many countries will face even higher import taxes beginning next week. Economists say those tariffs will push prices higher and slow down economic growth.
The Trump administration maintains the tariffs will help level the playing field and put American manufacturing on a stronger footing. African countries are reeling, though. Kate Bartley reports the highest tariffs will hit the tiny nation of Lesotho.
Last month, Trump joked no one knew where Lesotho was. This week, he levied 50% tariffs on the tiny mountain kingdom that is one of the poorest nations in the world. Lesotho has a large trade surplus with the US, to which it exports mainly textiles and diamonds. South Africa was also hit by some of the highest tariffs at 31%, which Pretoria labeled punitive. African island nations Madagascar and Mauritius were hit with 47% and 40% tariffs respectively. For NPR News, I'm Kate Bartlett in Johannesburg.
The Pentagon watchdog says it is reviewing Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's use of the Signal message app. Security concerns surfaced after a journalist was inadvertently included in a high-level group chat about military strike plans in Yemen in mid-March. Note, NPR CEO Catherine Marr chairs the board of the Signal Foundation, which supports the app. A wave of destructive tornadoes and torrential rainfall across much of the Midwest and South claimed at least 6 lives, and it isn't over yet. WUKY's Karen Czar with more.
Governor Andy Beshear believes the main tornado threats have passed Kentucky, but with rain forecast for much of this state for several more days, he says there are still threats of flash and riverbank flooding.
When you looked at just the inches of rain that are still expected on top of what we've gotten by the end of the weekend, that is really concerning.
The National Weather Service has issued flood warnings and watches for the majority of Kentucky until Sunday. Beshear has declared a state of emergency, deployed the Kentucky National Guard, and activated the state's Emergency Operations Center. For NPR News, I'm Karen Czar in Frankfurt.
This is NPR News.
President Trump announced new tariffs yesterday, calling it Liberation Day. These taxes are a part of his America First agenda. Hikes on goods coming from the UK, European Union, and Asia range from 10% to all the way to 50%. Our reporter Maud Yaish went to the East Village this morning to find out what the impact of these tariffs will have on small businesses, consumers, and how they plan to respond.
At the Whistle Salon in East Village, the owner, Will Johnson, is stylish. He has short hair, dyed blonde, and slicked down. He says tariff won't affect haircuts, but he will definitely feel the impact on the other part of his business.
I don't know what that's going to look like.
Johnson's salon does a lot of haircuts and shampoo sales, and he's expecting a 20% increase on those products starting today.
As of right now, our distributor is in New Hampshire, and so they have stockpiled a good bit to try to guarantee us a price for a certain amount of time. I don't know how long that will last.
But unlike spacious New Hampshire, Johnson's New York salon doesn't have room to stockpile. It's small and space is tight.
I then also went on to look at other American brands possibly of hair color, Aveda, Paul Mitchell, not things I'm super thrilled about, but also ingredients in those are made specifically in Europe and they will be imported still.
Johnson says when it comes to raising prices on hair color, there is no way around it. His profit margin is not super high.
So yeah, it's that fine line of like, we still want to offer this service. We have to offer the service. It's something we do a ton of. I think I have 5 today. If I'm making $12 off of them, it doesn't really make it worth it where I could do a haircut in the same amount of time.
But 2 blocks away, the Red Beer coffee shop isn't raising its prices. Yasmin San is a barista there. She says her coffee shop is trying to stay competitive and affordable, despite Trump's tariff.
People usually they ask price first since prices went up. So we are trying to keep the coffee prices same. But I heard from the customers, everything is so expensive.
Back at the Whistle Salon, Will Johnson is planning a meeting with his staff next week. Unless he figures out how to give his coster haircut, they'll be talking about raising prices. Modeish, Columbia Radio News.
Nearly 300,000 students from India come to the United States on F1 visas. The visa allows international students to study in the U.S. full-time. But Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced recently that if there's visa holders who are involved in activities that are counter to our national interests, their visas would be revoked. And that's exactly what's happened to a number of international students recently who have been detained by ICE. Sadhunshu Keshag, an executive director of the North American Association of Indian Students. He's a student himself, and to be clear, an American citizen. I asked him, with all that's going on right now to international students, what's to come in the U.S. right now to study?
When you're instilling fear among demographics, among these students, why would they come? I don't want to fearmonger and say, oh, people are, they don't want to come here. I think what you'll see now is that people that do have the options will look at the options. And, you're giving away almost your competitive advantage. But I wouldn't underestimate the appeal of the American dream. I think this American dream just transcends any barriers, boundaries, issues that, we logically might think of that would come in the way.
In terms of like college and PhD graduate students, is there a different sense of trust with their schools and administration?
Yeah, that's a really complicated question. When you enroll in a university or college, your relationship is less with the US government and more with the university and institution. So at first and foremost, you think, okay, the university and the institution will protect you. And in the past 2 years, I think, that's been kind of put to the side. But what I do think is, obviously, people are smart enough to know that it is a government institution, the administration that is making this happen or enforcing this. I do think that the more academically inclined, I think they have a trust deficit right now with the university and the institutions because, of course, this was the freedom of academic research and pursuits was something that, they thought was enshrined to them, and then they thought that, the university would back.
And are there any precautions that students are taking or that you recommend students take?
Yeah, look, they're deciding to not be expressive as much on campus and on social media. It's the fear that has been able to set in. And I'm not sure if that's the intention of the administration, but, people that I thought would never have anything to fear for are doing and taking these extra precautionary measures. I mean, they've invested so much. Imagine investing 150K for a degree and then at the risk at the very last moment being able to, be sent away or your F1 visa be canceled. One of the things that we were really sure in that there were constitutionally enshrined values and rules that you received regardless of you being a citizen or not in the United States. And all of a sudden, that's up to grabs.
That was Sudhanshu Kashik, Executive Director of the North American Association of Indian Students. In 2022, the Biden administration launched a grant program to help farmers address climate change, but the Trump administration recently froze that funding without notifying farmers. Hannah Weaver has more on the impacts.
Out in front of our main barn are the main pasture for our milking flock. Facing kind of northwest, we look out over the Wilmington Range and Whiteface Mountain here in the Adirondacks.
That's Tyler Eaton. He's the owner and operator of Blue Pepper Farm. There, he and his family raise about 50 sheep for yogurt, wool, lamb, you name it. This time of year, the sheep spend most of their time cozied up in the barn, munching on hay. But in summer, the sheep are subject to the hot sun, and in recent years, that's gotten more intense. This causes heat stress, which decreases milk production. So, Eaton was planning on planting hundreds of trees to provide shade, enrich the soil, and capture more carbon. That effort was possible from a USDA grant called the Climate Smart Commodities Project. Now, though, the Trump administration has frozen funding for the program. And Eaton says that although the freeze isn't immediately impacting their business,
it does stop a whole lot of potential long-term benefits to both our farm, our sheep's welfare, and therefore our milk production and yogurt production and revenue and income.
John Ignatowski works with the Adirondack North Country Association, a nonprofit that supports economic development in the region. The association helped Tyler Eaton write the grant for the project.
At the end of the day, these farms were really leaning on this program and excited about this program to provide an opportunity to become more resilient in the headwinds of economic change and environmental change. And to have this money potentially disappear is devastating.
Ignatowski says these projects also impact consumers in New York City.
If we can't make the investments in farms in the North Country region of New York State, and these farms start to suffer, we're losing food supplies that can be exported to New York City, which creates a supply issue, which inevitably results in higher food prices.
The USDA has frozen funding for a number of grant programs to farms across the state, but hasn't explained the criteria for the freeze.
Most of what I see happening with those kind of funds certainly isn't wasteful.
Kitty O'Neill is an agriculture climate resilience specialist at Cornell who helps farmers with the business side of things. She said this funding freeze has effectively halved the money available for farm climate projects in New York State.
It's really strengthening the farming system across the state, keeping farms like Blue Pepper sort of moving forward in a sustainable way, economically, environmentally, climate-wise.
Eaton says he hopes if the production is disrupted by climate change, it will send a message to consumers that farming conditions are important and that farms need to be supported.
Disruptions create lots of opportunity, lots of teachable moments or learning experiences so that people be like, hey, why isn't this happening? Or why isn't this available? Or what happened to you guys? And then they're like, oh.
Some USDA farm grants were frozen and later made available again. Tyler Eaton says he hopes the funding comes through for his tree planting project. But in the future, he'll be looking for support from private grants more. One option is the American Farmland Trust, which recently announced an emergency grant fund for farmers. For now, though, Eaton says his farm will put their tree plan on hold and focus more on day-to-day operation rather than long-term solutions. Hannah Weaver, Columbia Radio News.
We're starting a series of commentaries from student reporters in our newsroom. Today, reporter Joya Ma offers a story about her grandma's homemade dumplings. Dumplings are a traditional food for family reunions in Chinese culture. Joya Ma has been missing this delectable meal since she left home.
If you ask me what dish I want most when I fly home to Urumqi in China, I would say my grandma's dumpling without hesitation. My grandma has been a bad cook for as long as I can remember. Yes, that's right, a bad cook. Dumplings are the only thing she makes that taste good. She doesn't like soy sauce because apparently it makes freckles darker. She doesn't like too much salt because it's bad for your health. She also doesn't like cooking oil in her dishes because, well, I'm sure it's also bad for you in some way. But amazingly, she makes the most delicious dumplings. Her recipe is simple, but her recipe for being a grandma is unusual. When I was born, my mother joked that I was the most precious gift she could give to her mother. That's because my mother was busy working as a tour guide, and my grandma raised me. My grandma was a high school teacher before she retired, so she treated me like a student, with a lot of discipline and tough love. While other kids were napping in their playpens, my grandma held my hand and marched me through all the parks in Guangzhou. Anytime I said, "I'm tired, I want to go home," she said, "We could take a 5-minute break," and then we kept walking. When I was about 5, Grandma took me to Hong Kong Disneyland. Instead of letting me wave at Mickey Mouse from the comfort of the stroller, we walked through the park from the moment it opened at 8 until it closed at 8 p.m. Not only did I have unusual strong calves for a preschool kid, but I also learned perseverance. My grandma got divorced at a young age and raised her 2 daughters, my mother and my aunt, by herself. The teacher's dormitory they lived in wasn't the most luxurious. It was tiny, with a bunk bed and communal bathroom. My grandma put up partitions to create a space to cook. My mother told me her childhood dream was to buy a house for my grandma, because all her life she'd been like a candle, sacrificing herself to light others up. Now, her spirit has affected my life, and it's my hope to be the strong woman that she has always been. I'm her proud granddaughter, and I'm her best student. I'm studying journalism at Columbia University, a place she knows as the best in the world. By the time I get back home, I'll be the one who takes care of her like she used to take care of me. Recently, I asked for her dumpling recipe. Add Sichuan peppercorns, salt, and chicken powder, or your favorite seasoning, to diced meat. Use a pair of chopsticks to mix well. Place the cabbage, which has been squeezed to remove excess moisture, and mix the seasoned meat well. I will always follow that recipe. As for her other dishes, they're probably better off forgotten.
You're listening to Uptown Radio. There's more to come. Stay with us. You're listening to Uptown Radio. I'm Madeline Riley. Next up, the Street Master Plan law was failing to protect cyclists' safety, and the Adams administration is not holding up their end of the bargain. And writers on the popular fanfiction platform Archive of Our Own say there's been a shift in the supportive culture on the site. They say it's the result of the increased political hostility towards the queer community. Later in the show, matcha shortage may be expected to appear in New York coffee shops. How much will this affect the market? These stories and more coming up.
Governor Kathy Hochul signed 3 new gun violence prevention laws this afternoon. These new laws target pistol converters, which turn semi-automatic guns rapid fire. She also released new data which says shootings have declined 53% statewide since its peak during the pandemic. This year, there were already 236 shootings across the state. This time 3 years ago, there were 497. Mayor Eric Adams announced this morning that he'll run for re-election in the fall as an independent. This means he won't be listed on the primary ballot in June against the other mayoral candidates on the Democratic ticket. It also gives him more time to strategize how to keep his mayoral seat. Adams has been polling consistently behind former Governor Andrew Cuomo, and this week, Progressive Democratic State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani moved in front of Adams into the number 2 spot. The NYPD said today that they suspended 2 officers who fled the scene of a car crash early Wednesday morning in Upper Manhattan. The officers said they were chasing what they thought was a stolen car. When the car lost control and crashed, the officers sped away. They also didn't file a police report, leaving others to find the driver dead in the burned car. The NYPD says the officers are suspended and the case is still under review. George Clooney will make his Broadway debut tonight. He's starring in Good Night and Good Luck. It's a play based on the 2005 movie about broadcast journalist Edward Murrow, set during the McCarthy era during a time of political repression and persecution. In the film, he had a supporting role as Fred Friendly, but on the stage, he'll play Murrow, the lead. Opposite him will be Ilana Glazer, known more for her comedic roles. The curtains open at the Winter Garden Theater this evening, and tickets are nearly sold out for its April dates. But tickets are still available for May. And it's time to get outside New York. Outdoor dining is back this week through the city's official program, and Governor Kathy Hochul is trying to boost it even more. Her office announced this morning that they will recognize conditional approvals to get more bars and restaurants officially compliant for their outdoor seating. Tonight would be a good night for it, too. It's currently 72 degrees and cloudy here in Morningside Heights. It'll stay cloudy till sunset at 7:23 p.m. For Columbia Radio News, I'm Hannah Weaver.
It's been 6 years since the Street Master Plan law was introduced. It promised to usher in a new era of street safety for New York City residents, including protected bike lanes for the nearly one-third of New Yorkers who ride a bicycle. Yet, as Flora Warshaw reports, this is the 3rd year in a row that the Department of Transportation has failed to meet its goals that it set out.
On the corner of 149th Street and St. Anne's here in Mott Haven in the Bronx, it's business as usual this afternoon. Kids are being picked up from school, people are walking into the Burger King behind me. Yet just last week, an MTA bus struck and killed a cyclist here. According to the non-profit Transportation Alternatives, traffic violence killed 25 New York cyclists last year, and 85% were killed on streets without protected bicycle infrastructure. Kevin DeLoya, a Bronx local, has taken matters into his own hands to highlight this issue.
We place what we call ghost bikes as memorials and as dedications to somebody who was riding a bicycle and was killed, either with traffic violence or just on their bicycle alone.
And why did you decide to get involved in this movement?
In my neighborhood, and I live in Throgsneck, a young man, 23 years old, was hit and killed in a hit-and-run crash on Tremont Avenue. And it didn't seem like the public seemed to, publicize it too well right away. I have a ghost bike right across the street. I have a ghost bike right here where we're standing on this northeast corner. I have a ghost bike on 141st Street and Brook. I got to put a second one up here now. So we're talking in a 4-block area that there's 4 bicycle fatalities. That immediately should put up a flag, right?
The government did promise to do more in preventing deaths like these. In 2019, the New York City Streets Master Plan was brought in. It promised several benchmarks, including 250 miles of protected bike lanes by 2026. A protected bike lane is simply a physical barrier, like a curb or even planters, separating the cycling lane from the main road. Alexa Sledge from Transportation Alternatives says she's disappointed by the mayor's failure to follow through with the plan.
Unfortunately, every year that Mayor Adams has been in office, he hasn't met those legal benchmarks. So every single year, he has not built the number of bike lanes that are legally required for him to build. So he is breaking the law every single year when it comes to the streets plan.
Last year, the Department of Transportation fell short of hitting its required goals, only succeeding in creating just over half of the planned 50 bike lanes for that year. Activists are not the only ones holding the mayor accountable. At a city council hearing in January, the DOT had to defend its progress of the streets master plan. Kevin McClear, a representative for Councilmember Lynn Shulman from Queens, wants more transparency on the issue.
Yeah, we think it's disappointing that the administration is not holding up their end of the bargain when it comes to implementation of the law. There's obviously limitations that they face, but that shouldn't preclude them from following city legislation to the letter.
I reached out to the DOT for comment, and I was referred to a press statement. It emphasised that despite not meeting the benchmarks laid out by the plan, the DOT has still installed an all-time high 87.5 miles of protected bike lanes and upgraded an additional 20-plus miles. The DOT says it's made this progress despite facing issues such as a lack of funding and the COVID pandemic. And it will continue to strive to meet the goals laid out in the plan. Flora Warshaw, Columbia Radio News.
Fan fiction is the reimagination of characters from TV series, movies, novels, or video games. Writers around the world create new stories with already existing characters and universes. One of the most popular platforms to post fanfic is on Archive of Our Own. The name is an homage to queer icon Virginia Woolf and her book, A Room of One's Own. Many of the stories on the platform explored themes of queer life and queer fanfic writers. But recently, some of the writers say they feel less welcome on the platform. ZJ Young has more.
Miko is a financial manager living in New York City. In 2023, she saw a film, Red, White, and Royal Blue, about the romantic same-sex relationship between the son of the President of the United States and the Prince of the United Kingdom.
And who knows about this?
Literally no one but you. And the Secret Service. And Percy. Right, and Nora.
Oh, and I told my sister.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was really happy for us.
The movie captured her imagination.
I like the characters very much, and I created something like, I wonder how it's gonna be like if they have much difference in age. So that was my original thought.
So she began writing, creating new stories and reimagining the characters. Then, starting last year, she began posting her stories on the Archive of Our Own platform, known as AO3, an online community of fanfiction writers. To her surprise, her writing was warmly received.
I saw the comments, I saw many feedbacks coming back to me, and many happy moments. They said, the one thing I remember most is, I haven't imagined that they can live like this.
Miko isn't her real name. She doesn't want to be identified as the author of these stories, which she says are private and intimate. Her work joins over 16 million pieces of fanfiction on the AO3 platform. Among these, there are more than 190,000 stories tagged by the authors as queer. Henry Jenkins is a professor of communication at the University of Southern California, studying media and popular culture, and he also writes fanfiction. He says fanfiction and the AO3 platform in particular is a safe place where writers can explore aspects of their own sexual curiosity, their own sexual experiences.
One of the things that excites me about it is it's a space where people who are straight, gay, lesbian, trans, asexual can write and read each other's work and explore sexual feelings and sexual identities in a way that's non-threatening.
Normally on the platform, writers read and responded to each other's critiques and comments with friendliness and care. But recently, Miko says the comments have included cursing and personal attacks and a growing hostility towards her themes of queer romance and sex.
Some people would come to comment like, you're writing about this too much, something very harsh, in a very harsh way.
Jenkins says this kind of hostility towards queer fanfiction is in line with events of our time.
Well, have you read the news these days? No, I mean, we've got a president of the United States who is transphobic and queerphobic in every possible way. He's got a large enough base of support to have won the last election. And so I'm not shocked that there's conflict and controversy around a community that generally has had a positive attitude toward a range of sexual identities and experiences.
And no matter where these attacks and oppositions come from, the Archive Our Own platform worked to ensure the safety of the space for the writers to share and write. Francesca Coppa is a fan fiction writer, professor of literature at Molenbeek College, and one of the co-founders of the AO3 platform. Coppa says she hopes readers aren't intimidated by any comments on the site.
I feel like fanfiction writers shouldn't feel any pressure. Your reader is out there and wants to read your story, and you should write the story you want to write and trust that it will find its reader.
Miko recently finished her latest chapter and published it on the AO3. She plans to continue writing the story, despite the comments, although she hasn't thought of how the story will end yet. ZJ Yang, Columbia Radio News.
This spring, New Yorkers may expect a matcha shortage at their favorite coffee shops. Supply chain issues and growing demand for the Japanese tea have impacted matcha distribution all over the globe. Reporter Dana Binfet took a trip uptown to find out more.
It's a rainy morning on the Upper West Side, and New Yorkers are lined up at Blank Street Coffee on Broadway.
I ordered a strawberry shortcake matcha large from Blank Street here. It's really good.
Kayleen Kabia is here for her matcha. She picks one up every day on her way to high school nearby. But lately, she started to notice that shops are low on stock.
I'm kind of worried about it because I really like it, you know? It keeps me going every day, so it's better than coffee to me.
It's not unusual these days for coffee shops to turn away customers seeking matcha beverages. Karen Dunlap is a co-founder of a matcha importing business, Matcha Source. She says that this sort of shortage is due largely to the rapid rise in popularity of the drink here in New York.
The matcha shortage, at least in North America, is kind of a new phenomenon because for so long, Japanese matcha was so prized and so special that it really was kept in country. They only look to exporting outside Japan when the traditional ways of tea started to decline in younger generations.
Today, matcha has become an integral part of the beverage industry in New York City. Even the coffee carts outside the Natural History Museum have matcha on the menu. The majority of matcha is still harvested in Japan, where over 4,000 tons of matcha was produced in 2023, almost 3 times the amount produced 10 years earlier. Dunlap says, when she started selling matcha in 2007 to cafes in New York, nobody knew what it was.
So I had to do lots of demonstrations. There was a lot of hesitation, but it was really like Starbucks bringing it in and making it into mainstream culture with like with their matcha lattes, that it started to be in a wider culture.
Social media featuring the tea was key to its growth. But unlike Instagram posts, production of matcha can't be quickly scaled up. For one thing, the plants take up to 5 years to mature, so even if the farmers expanded today, it wouldn't immediately solve the crisis.
And then they'll harvest these super green leaves. It goes through a whole process of halting, the oxidation process after harvest, and then they age it, and then they grind it into powder. So there's many steps that go into the process of making this jewel of a tea.
Mark M. is a co-partner at Chalet, the matcha bar and cafe on the corner of 82nd Street in Amsterdam. The shop has been serving matcha lattes, matcha Arnold Palmers, and matcha cappuccinos for 7 years. Shortages like this, he says, will come and go.
There have been always seasons where they didn't have enough matcha because of weather and everything else, but we've always been able to, work things out. So not too stressed about it, but I feel like it's gonna be okay.
Have you guys heard about the matcha shortage? Are you worried about it?
Yes, we heard about it. I'm not really worried about it because for us, we import our own matcha. So we directly work with farms, so we don't have a middleman. So we haven't really noticed too much difference.
Cecily Goobster is an undergraduate student at Columbia and a big matcha fan. Yesterday, she ordered her usual drink at Joe's Coffee, but the barista told her the matcha had sold out.
I was a little sad. I got to try it. It was still good, but, you know.
Today, though, Goopster returned to Joe's and walked away with her favorite, an iced matcha latte. Dana Binfet, Columbia Radio News.
We hope you enjoyed the show. Our foreman today was executive producer Hannah Lorenzo. Leading our staff of reporters was senior producer ZJ Young. Special thanks to our senior editor Joya Ma and assistant editor Caroline McCarthy. Director Una Milliken and coordinated our studio production with Flora Warshaw. Thanks to our newscaster Hannah Weaver and our day reporters Ma Yishi and Dana Binfet. Our instructors are Sally Herships and Ben Shapiro and Priscilla Albee. They advised our staff. I'm your host, Madeline Riley. Uptown Radio is live on Thursdays at 4 and anytime at uptownradio.org. From all of us here at Uptown Radio, thanks for listening.